We now turn our attention to this craze that's quietly and quickly becoming a big business here in the United States. Preppers, P-R-P-P-E-R-S, preppers. These are people who are preparing to live for months and months at a time in an event of a disaster. It doesn't stop there. A group of preppers are bracing for an invasion from either zombies or aliens. It sounds crazy, but we sent Sean Callebs to investigate more on the business of prepping.
There are those who believe, be prepared now, that the end will come in a flash. Or others point out, nearly 100 years ago, a pandemic flu outbreak killed as much as 5% of the global population.
And within a matter of months, as many as 50 million would be dead.
This is where we keep just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of the other.
There are a growing number of people in the United States who call themselves preppers, prepared to live on their own if the worst happens.
Sleeping bags, dried food, canning supplies. We're into canning.
James Knight likes to say he's a rational man, a decorated military vet and an aircraft mechanic and a prepper.
I had a friend that described it very well, is there's those who prep because they know that they need to, and there are those who prep because it's a hobby. With me, it's a hobby.
Rice and other grains are frozen, vacuum sealed with oxygen absorbers.
Now, the two things that destroy food are oxygen and UV rays, or UV sunlight. So once you've taken care of the oxygen, you put it in a Mylar bag.
Catering to preppers or survivalists is big business, generating at least $600 million a year in the U.S. and propping up conventions like this one in Atlanta.
It tells us that people are serious and concerned about this. And again, 2-3 years ago, I never heard of it.
Slap the word survivalist on it, and people here want to buy it. The tactical look is big heater. There are, of course, foods, first aid, and some items are cheap.
Least expensive item is like a little egg whisk that we have over here.
And how much?
$1.
Insulator roof system. The most expensive we found, $290,000 for a 2,800 square foot concrete and steel reinforced underground home. That's right, underground, away from all things bad.
Check out one of our structures. We're 10-foot tall ceilings, 12-foot tall ceilings. We have all the amenities and the custom finishes of your traditional home. The only difference is we don't have windows.
Again, living like a gopher, but safe from this. And the winds that cause this. And perhaps even this.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think something is happening.
Yes, some preppers do believe this.
In the prepper community of most, middle-of-the-road preppers, those are referred to as the tin hat crowd. The people who put their aluminum foil on their hats so that the government's rays don't mess with their brain.
But if you ask the people raking it in at the Preppers Expos, the tin hat crowd's money is just fine.
Well, first of all, congratulations, Sean, for finding a business angle to this. I originally thought this was a crazy story, but I stand corrected. It's not a crazy story because these are people who are happy to have an extended period of time to live off of basically nothing. Now, what about electricity?
Well, there's all kinds. You can have generators that can run off kerosene. The gentleman we spent some time with is putting solar panels up. And so if something happens, and it happened to him before, a big ice storm went through Atlanta, his neighbors lost power. He threw a couple of logs in the fireplace. He cranked up his generator, turned on his satellite TV, and he was living great.
Now, joking around aside, I mean, some of this stuff is extreme. They're preparing for months and months at a time. For most of us, you could lose electricity due to a big storm like here in Washington for a couple of days. What's a realistic amount of sort of food and water you should set aside for yourself?
Well, I spent a lot of time living in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and I learned to take those kinds of things very seriously. It depends on how big the storm is, where you live, but I mean, you should have water and stuff on hand for at least 3 days. That's what they always tell you. That's the reason you see a big run on supermarkets before any kind of ice storm, possible hurricane, things like that. But these folks are trying to avoid something like that.
Let me read you something. You're going to be shocked. the probability of dying from a tsunami, 1 in 500,000, an asteroid, 1 in 500,000, a dog, 1 in 147,000. To die in an airplane accident is 1 in 20,000. So you're more likely to die in a plane than from all these different natural disasters. Fair enough? This is from the World Health Organization. Yeah, so you can take this. But here's my question is, I mean, there's so many other dangerous things in the world, like crossing the street and things like that. Why do people spend so much time to prepare for something that's honestly unlikely to happen?
Well, it's a valid question, and I think you heard Mr. Knight talk about, like, he's a hobbyist. This is something he does. He's lived in the military.
So it's partially fun for them too.
Well, you know, it's partially fun, but it's rooted in something serious. Look, people look at what went on here in Washington D.C. The government's shutting down for 17 days, and they don't want any part of these people being the front line of defense and getting them supplies.
The lesson, everybody, including those of you watching the control room, is we want to go on a hiking trip with Sean Callebs. Thank you very much. Awesome stuff. Great stuff.
Be prepared. That's Boy